Your classic werewolf can change shape anytime it wants, day and night, whenever it takes a notion to. That's why I call them shapeshifters. I got a dozen books on it.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, where I cover vampires, werewolves, and other supernatural creatures. Finally, we're going to be looking at The Howling. This has definitely been one of my most requested videos in the past year. I can't even count how many comments I've read telling me to cover this movie, so here we are. The Howling came out in 1981, the same year as American Werewolf in London. This kinda reminds me of how The Lost Boys and Near Dark also came out in the same year. The Howling was directed by Joe Dante and based on the novel of the same name written by Gary Brandner. This story has a lot of interesting twists and lore, so let's get into The Howling. The unique lycanthropy curse, a family of werewolves, and a cult known as the Colony.
Vicinity Western and DeLongpre. Report any sighting. Repeat, report any sighting.
The movie begins with our main character Karen being wrapped up in a sting operation to catch a serial killer named Eddie the Mangler. He got that name because all of his victims look like they were attacked by animals. Karen is a news anchor, and this killer, named Eddie Quist, began contacting her. She's kind of famous for being a news anchor, and he has a weird infatuation with her. The police use this to their advantage and set up a sting operation to catch him. Using a payphone, she talks to Eddie and he tells Karen to come to a movie store.
Are you wearing what I asked you to? Good.
On her way, the microphone that's supposed to be listening for safety stops working and they lose track of her. So she's on her way to meet a serial killer and they don't know where she is. Her boyfriend is a little pissed off. Karen goes into the movie store and then into the back area. Eddie is in there and speaks to her. His voice then changes and sounds much creepier.
Turn around now, Karen.
When she turns around, she is frozen with fear, unable to even scream. We don't get to see Eddie's face, so we don't know what was so terrifying. Lucky for her, some of the cops that were looking for her tracked her down to the movie store. They hear some commotion in the back and run to help her. The younger cop immediately pulls his gun and shoots through the wall, killing Eddie. Afterwards, Karen is very shaken up and the cops are confused. Eddie had no weapon at all, so what was he planning? Well, it's too late to find out now. He's dead.
Now what the hell happened back there?
Don't ask me, Lieutenant. Ask Quick Draw McGraw here.
They try to ask Karen what happened in the room, but she can't remember. The event was so traumatic for her that she's blocked it out, like amnesia. She also begins to have nightmares about the event. Two people from the news station, Chris and Terry, are doing a story on Eddie. They talk to his coworker and find out where he lives. When they enter his apartment, they're a little confused. There's strange drawings all over the walls that look like wolfmen. There's also a bunch of articles of his killings. A dog jumps up in the window for an unnecessary jump scare, and then they find a drawing. It's a landscape, and Terry wonders if it's a real place. A little on the nose with that one, because now we pretty much already know that, yeah, it probably is a real place. Terry says they should call the cops, suggesting that they found where the killer lived before the police. Pretty good reporters. They know for sure it was the killer who drew everything, because he signed his name. They go to the doctor afterwards to get a statement about Eddie for their story. Back at the news station, Karen tries to go back on air for the first time since her run-in with Eddie. Even Chris comments that she looks shaky, but the boss says she's fine. Of course, it goes terribly, and she freezes up immediately, forcing them to cut away. She has an appointment with Dr. Wagner after, and she admits that she can't remember anything that happened in the video store. Only little bits and pieces in her dreams. He also asks her how her relationship with Bill is going, and she says they're trying to communicate, insinuating they may have had some problems in the past. The doctor recommends that she spend a week or two at the Colony, a special place that will allow her, as the doctor says, to
can recharge your batteries.
He only recommends it to special patients he thinks can benefit. There's seminars, group therapy, everything she will need. Karen is now on her way to the Colony with Bill, and she's already second guessing this place. She says, "What do you think goes on up there? I hope they're not weird." Well, there's that worry gone. They're at what seems to be some kind of party going on at the beach. They're introduced to another couple and everyone seems friendly enough, except this creepy guy named TC staring at Karen. Bill is offered some food but doesn't want any meat because he's a vegetarian. He owns a couple health clubs, so he's all about eating well. A woman who reminds me of Mary Ann from True Blood hits on Bill, but he walks away. The evil grin on her face says this isn't over yet though. Another woman then tells Karen that that girl's name is Marcia, and apparently she's a nymphomaniac. Just when everything seems calm, that old guy says he wants to end it all and tries to jump in the fire. I have a theory of why he might have tried to do this, and I'll bring that back up later. The doctor manages to talk the old man down and sends him off to bed. This was a little unnerving for Karen's first day here. That night, while sleeping in their bungalow, Karen has a dream about the old man, then hears a loud howling outside. She gets up out of bed to check it out and continues to hear the howling. However, it doesn't sound like animals. Karen wakes up Bill and tells him to listen to the howling, but when he wakes up, it stops. He tells her she's from the city. She's never heard the sounds of the country before, don't worry about it. She tries to go back to bed, but she can't, so she sits by the fire instead. That's when we see a POV shot of someone approaching the cabin. Karen must have spidey senses or something because she seems to know that someone is outside and grabs her flashlight. She goes outside to look around, but runs back in when she hears another howl. That's when we see someone watching from the bushes. It's TC, the creepy guy from the beach, and Marsha's brother. The next day, Karen calls the police about the strange noises in the woods and hearing something outside. An officer arrives with a shirt that's way too tight. Those buttons are hanging on for dear life. Anyway, he says he'll check it out, but it's probably just coyotes.
Tattoo, huh? I remember one on him when he came in. There was a car.
Back in the city, the reporters Terry and Chris are going to the coroner's to check out the body of Eddie. They ask about a tattoo that Eddie had, an animal head. A wolf, no doubt. When the doctor opens up the door, he's shocked to find that the body is gone. Not only that, but they notice all these crazy dents and scratches on the inside of the door, like something was trying to get out. At the colony, Karen is spending some time outside with one of the women. They are hearing strange noises again coming from the woods, and it sounds like cows, but she says they don't sound right. The other woman says, I don't know what cows are supposed to sound like, but Karen says, not like that. If I heard cows like that, I would get the hell out of there. Instead, Karen gets a rifle from the woman's husband and they go looking through the woods in the middle of the night. They find a mutilated cow and something sneaks up behind them. It's just some others from the colony, and apparently they found another mutilated cow nearby. I wonder what could be doing that. The next day, all the men from the colony go on a hunt together to see if they can find what's responsible. They don't. Bill gets his first ever kill hunting, but they don't find anything that could have killed those cows. Karen is having a session with the doctor, and they try to see if she can remember what happened, but it almost causes her to have a panic attack, so they stop. This event was so traumatic that just trying to remember it almost causes her to break down. In the city, Chris and Terry are still researching for their special about Eddie the Mangler. They find a guy who owns an occult store. He says he gets everyone in here. Sun worshippers, moon worshippers, Satanists. The Manson people used to hang around here and shoplift. Bunch of deadbeats. They ask if he knows any groups into stealing corpses, aka Eddie. Since his body went missing, they assume that somebody stole it. That's when Terry finds something in the book she's reading. A number of women were killed in the next month, their bodies exhibiting signs of animal attack. That's very similar to what's happening now. They said all the victims of Eddie looked like they were attacked by animals. That's why they call him Eddie the Mangler. Chris wants to know what book that's from, and it's Warlocks, Werewolves, and Demons. Chris half seriously says, well, we'll check if any of Eddie's killings were on a full moon. That's when the store owner says, that's a load of Hollywood baloney. Your classic werewolf can change shape anytime it wants, day or night, whenever it wants to. That's why they call them shapeshifters. I got a dozen books on it. Terry wants to know about silver bullets, and the store owner agrees. Silver bullets would do it. Or fire. That's the only way to get rid of the damn things. They're worse than cockroaches. They come back from the dead if you don't kill them right. Plus they regenerate. You know what that is? Cut off an arm, cut off a leg, stick a knife in their heart? Nothing. They may look dead, but 3 days later, they're good as new. Chris wants to know if he really believes in this.
What am I, an idiot? I'm making a buck here. You want books? I got books.
So I guess he doesn't really believe, but he sure knows a lot. The store owner says he has everything from chicken blood to wolfsbane, even some silver bullets that a guy never picked up. They agree to buy the book about werewolves and the silver bullets. Chris and Terry probably don't fully believe yet, they're just buying this stuff for their story they're doing on Eddie. But it's possible that after hearing everything about werewolves, they think that there's at least a possibility that it could be true. I mean, his body did disappear from the morgue, and it was 3 days after he was shot, just like the store owner said.
They may look dead, but bam, 3 days later they're as good as new.
We learned a lot about these werewolves from the store owner. For one, they don't need a full moon and can turn at will just like the Lycans from Underworld. We also know they have a great healing ability and can even regrow arms and legs, survive being stabbed in the heart, and come back to life. The only sure ways to kill them are silver bullets or fire. At the colony, Bill is on his way back with his first kill, a rabbit, and the creepy guy says that his sister Marsha will cook it for him. Bill again states that he's a vegetarian and tries to stay away from meat, but TC said he could at least bring it back for Karen. He assures Bill that his sister would love to prepare it for him, so he goes inside. And of course, she immediately starts flirting with Bill and even kisses him. Again, he doesn't give in and storms away. I wonder why she's obsessed with Bill. While walking back through the dark woods, Bill hears a noise. Then we see part of a face of some hideous creature and a roar from the woods. Something large jumps on top of Bill and bites him in the shoulder. It's hard to get a good look at what it was, but it looked too big to be an ordinary wolf. He manages to limp back to the cabin and Karen helps him inside. They immediately go to the doctor and he bandages Bill's wounds and gives him a shot, probably for rabies or something since he was bitten by a wild animal. Or so he thinks. That same night, Karen then calls Chris and Terry while they're watching a werewolf movie. Karen asks them to come to the colony because Bill was bitten by a wolf. Just then, the movie they're watching says, "Whoever is bitten by a werewolf and lives, becomes a werewolf himself." The next day, Terry is driving up to the colony by herself. Chris is staying behind an extra day to pitch the idea for the special about Eddie. As soon as he's done, he'll come up to the colony. He reassures Terry not to worry. It's just a movie. Bill was probably just bitten by a stray dog or something. Terry arrives and Karen tells her about Marcia trying to put the moves on Bill. Even though she hasn't seen anything yet, she can just feel it. That's when Terry remembers that she brought food, but forgot that Bill was a vegetarian. When they look over, he's tearing into a big piece of meat and says not to worry. He'll eat anything if he gets hungry enough. Right. He's been against eating meat for the entire movie. Then he gets bitten by a wolf and now he suddenly likes meat?
Coincidence?
That night, Karen tries to get some, but Bill isn't in the mood. She falls asleep and has a strange nightmare with someone whispering her name. I wonder if this is just a nightmare or if someone is manipulating her. She wakes up and is angry to find that Bill has snuck out. And guess who's waiting for him? He approaches Marcia in the forest and the two begin to embrace. While they are making love, they begin to change. This is the first transformation we get to witness. Both of them grow large sharp teeth and Bill lets out a loud roar. It's interesting that this movie came out the same year as American Werewolf in London, and they both took unique approaches to the werewolf transformation. American Werewolf is known for having a long transformation scene, but the ones in the Howling are even longer. They both do a kind of half transformation, then as the camera zooms out we see them take on their fully wolf form, but it's kind of in a stop motion type animation. Loud wolf howls fill the air and it wakes up Terry, so she grabs her recorder. We see that the doctor hears the howling as well, but he doesn't look afraid or surprised. It's very possible he could have something to do with what's going on here, since it's his retreat. The next day, Terry is listening to the recordings and doing some writing. While walking around the colony, she notices something familiar. She pulls out the drawing from Eddie's room, and it matches. This is probably where Eddie's from. She continues to walk through the forest alone and hears someone whisper to her. No one is close enough to be whispering to her, but she hears it again, telling her, "Over here." This must be some kind of telepathy and lends credence to my theory from earlier that the whispering in Karen's dream may be someone manipulating her, or trying to. As Terry follows the whispering, she is led to Marcia's cabin, and something is following her. She looks around the property and yells inside to see if anyone's there. No one responds, so she starts looking around. That's when we see a shot of a large wolf-like creature outside. Terry takes a picture of a drawing that looks just like the one from Eddie's apartment. On a door we see a smiley face sticker. This sticker was also seen at the movie store by Karen. They must belong to the killer. In a bedroom, she finds drawings all over the walls, and this looks like it could be where Eddie lives. As Terry is looking around, the werewolf starts to growl and bang on the door. Terry jumps out the window and tries to hide, but she's found immediately by the werewolf. It starts breaking down the wood barrier and grabbing onto her. She thinks fast and uses a wood-cutting axe to cut the arm of the beast off, causing it to retreat. After the hand was cut off, it reverted back to human form. Terry wasn't sure whether or not to believe in this werewolf stuff, but now it's pretty much confirmed and she is terrified. She runs all the way to Doc's cabin and calls Chris to tell him what she's seen. He finally answers and she tells him that it's real. She's seen drawings just like the ones from before, in the landscape. It's in the colony. Christopher is much more calm and asks if Terry is in the doctor's office, then tells her to look through the records under Quist. She looks through the filing cabinet and finds 3 names under Quist: Marcia, TC, and finally Eddie. So they are a family of werewolves. Right after she finds the files, Eddie finds her.
It's Eddie. Quist.
This is the first time we get a full look at the werewolf, and it looks awesome. It's quite tall, standing at 7 or 8 feet, covered in fur with large sharp teeth. These werewolves are very similar to something from Underworld or Dog Soldiers. They are a half-human hybrid type creature that walks on 2 legs. The creature corners Terry and picks her up by the throat. Chris can hear her screaming through the phone, but can do nothing to help. The wolf bites onto her neck, and she eventually goes limp. Chris doesn't know what happened, so he goes back to the store to get the silver bullets and heads straight to the colony. We see that the doctor's files were spilled all over the floor, and there's all kinds of research related to werewolves, so the doctor does know what's going on. It looks like he was studying the Quist family. Karen wakes up from another nightmare. She says it's the same dream, except now, Bill was in it. She sees scratches on Bill's back and she knows he was with Marcia. She accuses him of cheating and Bill gets mad and hits her. He tries to apologize and say, "You don't know what it's like." He must be a sex addict or something and he's cheated before. That's probably why the doctor asked Karen earlier if everything was okay with Bill. Karen packs up her stuff and leaves the cabin. She goes to the doctor's cabin and stumbles upon Terry's mangled body. Then Eddie appears. This is the first time Karen gets to see what Eddie actually looks like. He says, "Hello, Karen. Glad you came. I wanted to see you again. You said on the phone you wanted to get to know me. Well, here I am, Karen. I want to give you a piece of my mind. I trusted you, Karen." She says, "I saw you die," but he just ignores her. He reaches up and pulls a bullet out of his forehead. Why would he leave the bullet in his head for days and only take it out now? It also switches to a comically bad rubber head when he pulls the bullet out. It doesn't even look anything like Eddie. After he pulls the bullet out, he begins to transform right in front of Karen. First, his face begins to distort and pulsate. This effect is really unique, and like I said before, it's interesting to see how this movie did its transformation compared to American Werewolf in London. As his face continues to pulsate, he lifts up his hands and large claws grow out of the ends of his fingers. His teeth get bigger and his body starts to grow like the Hulk. The roars sound great and the actor does a good job in this scene. I hate when they make vampires or werewolves sound like lions or some other animal because they can't make a unique sound. This sounds really good. Eddie's body begins to shake violently as he grows even bigger and grows fur. When we cut back to his face, it's now much creepier and the eyes have changed too. The mouth begins to push out into a snout and it makes the mouth look even creepier. For a few moments his mouth is pulled into a super creepy smile. That would have given me nightmares as a kid. It also can't be understated how long this transformation is. It really takes its time, but doesn't ever get boring. The effects are so cool that this whole scene had me on the edge of my seat, and thinking Karen has had a few minutes to escape, but instead she just stood there staring at this guy turn into a monster. Seriously though, she had so much time to get away. Eventually Eddie's head sprouts some large ears and his face continues to change shape with the snout getting bigger. His face is also still pulsating, accompanied by these stretching and cracking sounds. This shows that the man in the store was right. These werewolves can change form whenever they want. It takes a few minutes, but they don't have to wait for a full moon or anything. This transformation doesn't seem as painful as the transformation from American Werewolf in London. If anything, Eddie seems to enjoy it, which is equally as creepy. Once Eddie is fully transformed, he starts to approach Karen. She reaches behind her back and finds a jar of acid. She throws it at Eddie, burning his face and allowing her to get away. Why does a doctor keep a jar of acid sitting around? Also, there's a bottle of wolfsbane or something next to the acid, but it's impossible to read. All the effects in this movie look great. Okay, maybe except that rubber mask, but everything else looks great. Originally, Rick Baker was supposed to do the effects for The Howling, but left early in production to work on American Werewolf in London. I have talked about Rick Baker many times on this channel, and he is one of the best special makeup effects artists ever. Since he worked on the film for a very short time, it's possible that Baker's ideas influenced some of the effects used in The Howling. Ultimately, the artist that would take over The Howling was Rob Bottin, a genius in his own right. He has worked on such films as King Kong, Star Wars, Piranha, The Fog, The Howling, The Thing, RoboCop, Total Recall, Seven, Mission Impossible, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Fight Club, one uncredited episode in Game of Thrones, and one of my personal favorites, Mr. Deeds. Long story short, Rob Bottin is an absolute legend. The Howling really does have one of the best werewolf transformations though. The unique pulsating effect was created with air bladders under latex. Both The Howling and American Werewolf won film awards for how good they were. What a year for werewolf movies. So after burning Eddie's face, Karen tries to run away and get help, but is stopped by a few of the colony members. Apparently they've been looking for her. Karen is brought to a barn where all the colony members are gathered, and Terry's dead body is on display. Turns out, It's not just the Quist family. The entire colony is werewolves. Even the girl that was trying to be friends with Karen. The old man that tried to jump in the fire. All of them. The doctor arrives and Karen thinks that she's saved. But he's also a werewolf. She wants to know where Bill is, and they admit that he is one of them now. Apparently the plan was to have Bill turn Karen, but that wasn't working fast enough. Some fought against a gift when they were first turned. Then they found the doctor. He helped them to adjust. He understands all about the gift. How to use it. How to control it. That's how this cult refers to the lycanthropy curse. The gift. They tell Karen that she can still be with Bill if she accepts what they are offering. This whole time, Chris is speeding towards the colony, unaware that Terry is already dead. Inside the barn, some of the others begin to speak up, saying it was a mistake to bring her to the colony. We should have stuck to the old ways. Raising cattle for our feed. Where's the life in that? Humans are our cattle. Our prey. We should feed on them like we've always done. Screw this channel your energies crap. The doctor tries to reason with the others, warning them about the threat of exposure. They need this shelter to plan. To catch up with society. Times have changed, and we haven't. Not enough. We don't get a clear idea of how long they have been werewolves, but it sounds like some of them are quite old. From what I can gather, it sounds like the doctor came up with this plan of forming the colony and raising their numbers, getting cattle for them to feed on, and making a greater plan to integrate with society. The others don't feel the same though. They like their old ways of killing when they want and living in the shadows. Marcia, who seems to be the real leader of this group, tells the doctor to be quiet. She is disgusted by his idea of fitting in and living with the humans. Doc is through, and Karen belongs to them now. I forgot to mention that when Marcia got mad at the doctor at the beach, she hands him a book and says she doesn't want TC reading it. You've done enough damage. So from the start, Marcia didn't like Doc trying to change them and give them influence from the outside world. Also, it's mentioned that Doc wrote a successful book about how animals and humans are alike. I wonder where he got his research for that. Karen tries to run away, but they grab her immediately. TC says, "See what your friend did to me?" and he shows his hand that's been cut off, but looks like it's growing back. That means TC was the werewolf that attacked Terry at the cabin. The colony thinks Karen is too much of a risk, so they plan on killing her. The doctor actually tries to stop them from killing her and says, "I won't let you do this. She can't go missing. She's too well known." The others don't care though. They will just make it look like an accident. Doc is overpowered and forced to stand down. The old man says, "You can't tame what's meant to be wild, Doc. It ain't natural," implying that the doctor was actually trying to help them change for the better. It's just against their nature. Hold on, I just realized this while editing, but how do the tires screech when he's on grass? Finally, Chris arrives and goes to the doctor's cabin where Terry called him from. When he walks inside, there's a tape recorder playing of Terry interviewing the doctor. She asks him about Eddie's victims looking like they were attacked by animals, and if he's ever heard of lycanthropy. Right away, he sounds nervous and asks her where she heard that term, and Terry says late night TV. He dismisses the curse as a mental disorder. I wonder if this interview is why TC then attacked her. Maybe the doctor knew that Terry was getting too close. Chris finds blood on the recorder and the files of the Quist family. He picks them up, but then hears a noise. He grabs his gun, but Eddie smashes through the door and grabs it out of his hands. When he walks inside, we see Eddie's face is horribly disfigured from the acid that Karen threw at him before. His skin and muscle is melted away to the point where you can see his jawbone. The effect combined with the lighting make Eddie look disgusting. Terry's screams begin to play through the recorder because before she died, the recorder was turned on. He tells Chris to listen, then hands his gun back and tells him to consider it a gift. He welcomes Chris to shoot him and laughs. We know that normal bullets cannot kill a werewolf. That's why Eddie isn't worried. But he doesn't know that Chris bought those 30-06 silver rounds from the occult store. Eddie begins to transform, but before he gets too far, Chris shoots him twice and he dies instantly. Okay, so these silver bullets really work. Chris then goes to the barn and finds Karen being held there. She yells at Chris to stay back or they'll kill him. One of the werewolves says, "That gun won't do you any good." TC begins to transform and approach Chris. We get to see part of another pretty good transformation here. Eyes and teeth changing, the head starting to change. Then, as his snout extends, Chris shoots TC and he drops to the ground. The other werewolves are confused and approach the body, looking down at it, then up at Chris. He tells them he has silver bullets, and another werewolf says, "Silver bullets. Yeah, right. TC, stand up." But of course, TC doesn't stand up. Then Chris shoots him as well. The doctor appears again and starts walking at Chris. Not growling or turning though. Chris tells him to stop, but he's forced to shoot the doctor, and when he does, the doctor says, "Thank God." So I guess he had enough of the werewolf life and wanted to die. Remember when that old man tried to jump in the fire when Karen first arrived? I wonder if he tried to do that because Doc was trying to make them feed on cattle and live a different life. He might have been depressed like a killer whale in a zoo. So, Chris kills the doctor, then forces the rest of them back into the barn at gunpoint, rescuing Karen. They lock the door with a gun and then grab a gas can. At first I thought he locked the door with the silver bullet gun, which would have been pretty stupid, but no, he still has his gun. The gun he shoved in the door must have been from this guy. Chris wants to know where Terry is, and Karen admits that she is dead, and she thinks Bill is too. They said she could still be with Bill, but we didn't see him anywhere in the barn, so they might have killed him. They take the gasoline the colony was gonna use to kill Karen and dump it all over the barn and light it on fire. If you remember earlier, the guy from the store said the only two ways to kill a werewolf was fire or silver bullets. So burning the barn should kill most of them. We see inside the barn they are all transforming in an attempt to break down the walls, but the whole barn begins to collapse. Karen and Chris run back to the car. They are attacked but still manage to drive away. He's got a nice RX-7 by the way. One of the local police, or sheriff who is a werewolf, has set up a small roadblock and starts shooting at their car. They're forced to take cover, but Chris kills the cop with a silver bullet and then they have to run because their car catches fire and explodes. These cars have GTA style damage where you just shoot them enough and they explode. The two run for the police car and get inside. Of course, the engine won't start and they are surrounded by lichens. I guess they didn't all die in the fire. Chris kills one trying to break through the front window and finally the car starts. They start speeding away, but one manages to break through the back window and bite Karen. She points the gun backwards and kills the werewolf, but she's been infected. Karen looks into the back seat and sees Bill's dead body. He was the one who bit her. So I guess the doctor's plan worked out after all. Too bad he's dead. Also, it shows that Bill was still alive. If they were trying to get Karen to accept the gift, you would think that it would be a lot easier if they had Bill there. We see 3 werewolves howling at the moon as the car drives away, so we know at least 3 survived the barn. We now cut back to the city and Karen is about to go on air. Chris says, "I'm not sure if I can go through with this," but Karen says, "We have to." I wonder what they're planning. The news broadcast starts and the first thing talked about is the fire. The anchor says, "More word on the fire that's burning out of control up the coast tonight. Firefighters have discovered the blaze seems to have started at the colony. Bodies were discovered both inside and outside the colony building. Many of them burned beyond recognition." I would say that would prevent the werewolves from being exposed, but from what we've seen with Bill, when a werewolf dies, they revert to human form, so there wouldn't be any werewolf remains to find. Finally, it's Karen's turn. Her first story since she had to leave for the colony. She begins with "Good evening. From the day we are born, there is a battle we must fight." We can see from the teleprompter that she's not reading what she's supposed to. She's reading her own script. The boss is confused and wants to know what's going on. She's not reading from the prompter. Chris says, "We changed it." Now she gets to the grand finale. A secret society exists and is living among all of us. They're neither people or animals, but something in between. The boss begins to laugh at what she's saying. He says that's enough and tells the operator to cut to commercial, but Chris says, "Leave it." The boss gets more aggravated. "Leave it? Cut."
Leave it, cut.
Leave it!
And that's the end of that discussion. You have to remember this guy's wife was killed by a werewolf, so he wants to get this out as much as Karen does. Karen continues, "I know what you're all thinking, because I've been where you are. But I have proof. And tonight, I'm gonna show you something. Make you believe." As she is saying this, her voice is becoming shaky. When she finally lifts her head, her eyes are glowing yellow. She is gonna transform on live TV. She lets out a blood-curdling scream and begins to change. The crew freaks out and some of them leave. Karen looks over at Chris mid-transformation with a tear in her eye. Then, I can't lie, at one point she kind of looks like an Ewok. We see people watching the broadcast at home and they aren't even sure if they can believe what they're seeing.
What are you kids watching?
The news lady's turned into a werewolf.
We even see the guy from the occult store say,
Oh boy.
He doesn't seem that surprised, and I think he knew they were real all along. He just knew way too much about them, and literally everything he said was true. They can turn when they want, you can only kill them with silver and fire, everything. Karen continues to change, and Chris loads up a silver bullet and shoots her, putting an end to her curse.
Switch! Switch, damn it, switch!
The very final scene takes place in this diner. After the broadcast is cut off, one of the patrons says, "What they can do with special effects these days. See that one about the guy in the spaceship?" That man is cut off, and another patron says, "It was real. She turned into a werewolf and they shot her."
You're plastic.
Doesn't mean it wasn't real.
So this gives us an idea of how the general public in this movie would think. Some believed it, while others did not. The werewolves probably have nothing to worry about for now. The camera moves all the way down to the end of the bar. A man says he wants a pepper steak and a hamburger for the lady. When it finally reveals the last person at the bar, it's Marcia. Damn, so she was one of the 3 or so werewolves that survived. Definitely tried to set themselves up for a sequel there. What a good ending to a werewolf movie though. The twist with the cult, and then doing the transformation on live TV to prove their existence.
How you want it, honey?
Rare.
Now I want to do a summary of this lycanthropy curse. First, how you are turned. In order to be turned, you must be bitten by a werewolf and survive. After Bill was bitten, it only took him a day or 2 to be fully turned. After being turned, his wounds healed quickly and he had a sudden craving for meat, even though he was a vegetarian. This is pretty common in werewolf movies for someone to start craving meat or raw meat after being turned. Same with vampires. Other than eating meat though, his personality didn't change much after being turned. As for abilities, they do have a few. They have increased strength while in wolf form. Their speed seems to remain the same, but they have a great healing ability, even able to regrow limbs, and possibly some kind of telepathy. It might have been the werewolves trying to communicate with Karen in her dreams. That could have been why all of her dreams were strange nightmares about werewolves. It is possible it was just from her trauma, but I don't think that explains all of it, especially the whispering she heard in the one dream. TC was able to telepathically communicate with Terry, whispering to her to come here. Possibly their most dangerous ability is being able to transform whenever they want. Something else that makes these werewolves so intimidating is how hard they are to kill. They can only be killed with fire or silver bullets, and if you don't have silver bullets, you're probably screwed. There's no way Chris would have survived his encounter with the colony with just fire alone. Werewolves might also be weak to wolfsbane because it is mentioned, but we never see it used. Like I said earlier, this movie came out the same year as American Werewolf in London. Similar to how Near Dark didn't get the praise it deserved because it was overshadowed by The Lost Boys, I think this film was slightly overshadowed by American Werewolf in London. American Werewolf is often praised for its transformation, but The Howling is also a masterpiece. You get a unique werewolf curse with great visual effects, good acting, and an interesting mystery with Eddie, the doctor, and the colony.
The newslea's turned into a werewolf.
Oh boy.
That's my video on The Howling. I'm so glad I finally got around to covering this movie because it's even better than I remember. Sometimes making these videos gives me a whole new appreciation for a movie. The Howling did so well, it had 7 sequels, meaning there's 8 Howling movies in total. That's insane. Maybe one day I'll attempt to look at all of them to see if there's some kind of overarching story, but I doubt it. Apparently the 4th film, called The Howling: The Original Nightmare, is actually a better adaptation of the original novel. This movie had a great ensemble of actors, special effects, and director. Some of my other favorite Joe Dante films are Piranha, Gremlins, Small Soldiers, and the Looney Tunes movie. He's done many more, but those are some of my favorites. If there's any other movies, TV shows, or video games you want me to cover, please leave them in the comments down below. I haven't covered a video game in a while, so I might do that soon. Also, I will cover the new Nosferatu movie as soon as I can. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. It helps out a lot and I really appreciate it. As always, an extra shout out to all my members for going the extra mile and supporting the channel. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.